Hi, Dr. Alex here, and welcome to what I hope will be an enjoyable series to many people, although it may be of niche interest. Specifically, this series is transcribing the audiobooks of Douglas Adams' The Hitch-hiker's Guide to the Galaxy, The Restaurant at the End of the Universe, Life, the Universe and Everything, and So Long and Thanks for All the Fish, as read by Stephen Moore. Stephen Moore, for those who don't know, is the actor who played Marvin the Paranoid Android on the original radio production of The Hitch-hiker's Guide to the Galaxy and the TV series which followed soon after. This is the genuine Marvin the Paranoid Android, except no substitutes. When the radio series first aired in 1979, I was about 5 years old, and it was then repeated multiple times over several years on Radio 4, where it was first broadcast. My father was an avid fan of Hitch-hikers as soon as it was produced, had the books, which I still have copies of, and listened to the radio series repeatedly, as did I growing up, to the point where I think I overtook my father in terms of my fandom for the series and would insist that we listen to it whenever it was on a Saturday, usually around about lunchtime, and it just had to be on in the background so I could listen to it. Later, in school, having consumed the radio series multiple times and the books, I discovered the audiobooks in the school library, as read by Stephen Moore. And of course, I got these out and listened to them repeatedly as long as I could. Obviously, I had to take them back. They were, after all, library books on tape. Recently, I got to thinking about these books on tape and how enjoyable they were. Being read by Stephen Moore, it had the voice of Marvin the Paranoid Android whenever he read the Marvin lines, and of course, the correct voice for the other characters that he also read in the radio series. And simply as the narrator, he has an excellent reading voice. So I remembered how much I enjoyed those as a child and then thought, I wonder if they're still readily available. As it turns out, they are not. They have never been produced on DVD or online. They only exist in that original tape form, and those tapes themselves are incredibly hard to find, as I discovered as I attempted to dig them out online from various shops and sources. I have now got all but one of the books, and hopefully by the time I get to the last book that Stephen Moore read, I should have all the tapes available. I would like to stress, I do not own the copyright for these tapes. I do not own the copyright for the original material, and I'm recording them in these videos in an effort to preserve them because they are on magnetic tape. Magnetic tape degrades, and there aren't very many of them left around as far as I can see, and there's been no effort to reproduce these professionally in another format, either online, digitally, or even just on CD. So if you do own the copyright for these, please, by all means, copyright claim these videos as the material is your own, but I would request humbly that you do not block them, just monetize them. My channel isn't monetized, so I'm not going to make money from this anyway, but I would like people, future generations, to be able to access these amazing recordings and enjoy Stephen Moore's work long into the future. Anyway, enough about my motivations for doing this, and now here is The Restaurant at the End of the Universe, Cassette Side 3.
One of the major selling points of that wholly remarkable travel book, The Hitch-hiker's Guide to the Galaxy, apart from its relative cheapness and the fact that it has the words "Don't Panic" written in large, friendly letters on its cover, is its compendious and occasionally accurate glossary. The statistics relating to the geosocial nature of the universe, for instance, are deftly set out between pages 938,324 and 938,326. And the simplistic style in which they are written is partly explained by the fact that the editors, having to meet a publishing deadline, copied the information off the back of a packet of breakfast cereal, hastily embroidering it with a few footnotes in order to avoid prosecution under the incomprehensibly tortuous galactic copyright laws. It is interesting to note that a later and wilier editor sent the book backwards in time through a temporal warp, and then successfully sued the breakfast cereal company for infringement of the same laws. Here is a sample. The universe. Some information to help you live in it. 1. Area? Infinite. The Hitch-hiker's Guide to the Galaxy offers this definition of the word infinite. Infinite. Bigger than the biggest thing ever, and then some. Much bigger than that, in fact. Really, amazingly immense. A totally stunning size. Real, wow, that's big time. Infinity is just so big that by comparison, bigness itself looks really titchy. Gigantic, multiplied by colossal, multiplied by staggeringly huge, is the sort of concept we're trying to get across here. 2. Imports, none. It is impossible to import things into an infinite area, there being no outside to import things in from. 3. Exports. None. See imports. 4. Population. None. It is known that there are an infinite number of worlds, simply because there is an infinite amount of space for them to be in. However, not every one of them is inhabited. Therefore, there must be a finite number of inhabited worlds. Any finite number divided by infinity is as near to nothing as makes no odds, so the average population of all the planets in the universe can be said to be 0. From this it follows that the population of the whole universe is also 0, and that any people you may meet from time to time are merely the products of a deranged imagination. 5. Monetary units. None. In fact, there are 3 freely convertible currencies in the galaxy, but none of them count. The Altarian dollar has recently collapsed, the Flanian pobble bead is only exchangeable for other Flanian pobble beads, and the Triganic pew has its own very special problems. Its exchange rate of 8 ningies to 1 pew is simple enough, but since a ningi is a triangular rubber coin 6,800 miles along each side, no one has ever collected enough to own 1 pew. Ningis are not negotiable currency because the galactibanks refuse to deal in fiddling small change. From this basic premise, it is very simple to prove that the galactibanks are also the product of a deranged imagination. 6. Art. None. The function of art is to hold the mirror up to nature, and there simply isn't a mirror big enough. See point 1. 7. Sex. None. Well, in fact, there is an awful lot of this, largely because of the total lack of money, trade, banks, art, or anything else that might keep all the non-existent people of the universe occupied. However, it is not worth embarking on a long discussion of it now, because it really is terribly complicated. For further information, see Guide Chapters 7, 9, 10, 11, 14, 16, 17, 19, 21 to 84 inclusive, and in fact most of the rest of the guide. "How are we doing?" said Arthur Dent. "Badly," said Ford Prefect. "Where are we going?" said Trillian. "I don't know," said Zaphod Beeblebrox. "Why not?" demanded Arthur Dent. "Shut up!" "Basically, what you're trying to say," said Arthur Dent, ignoring this suggestion, "is that we're out of control." The ship was rocking and swaying sickeningly as Ford and Zaphod tried to wrest control from the autopilot. "It's the wild color scheme that freaks me," said Zaphod. "Every time you try to operate one of these weird black controls that are labeled in black on a black background, a little black light lights up black to let you know you've done it. What is this? Some kind of galactic hyperhearse?" In fact, though they weren't to know it, the decor had been chosen in honor of its owner's sad, lamented, and tax-deductible condition. The ship gave a particularly sickening lurch. Zaphod left the controls to Ford to figure out and lurched over to Arthur. "Look, Earthman, you've got a job to do, right? The question to the ultimate answer, right?" "All right, but where do we start?" "How should I know? They say the ultimate answer, or whatever, is 42. How am I supposed to know what the question is? It could be anything. I mean, what's 6 times 7? 42! Yes, I know that." Zaphod's faces fell. "I'm just saying the question could be anything at all, and I don't see how I'm meant to know." "Because you were there when your planet did the big firework."
"I know. It's printed in the Earthman's brainwave patterns, but I don't suppose you'll be very interested in knowing that."
"You mean you can see into my mind?"
"Yes."
Arthur stared in astonishment.
"It amazes me how you can manage to live in anything that small."
"Marvin," said Trillian, "if you knew all along, then why didn't you tell us?"
"You didn't ask."
At that moment the ship suddenly stopped rocking and swaying, the engine pitch settled down to a gentle hum. "Hey, Ford, that sounds good. Have you worked out the controls on this boat?" "No, I just stopped fiddling with them. I reckon we just go to wherever this ship is going and get off it fast." "Yeah, right."
"I could tell you weren't really interested."
"Trouble is," said Ford, "that the one instrument in this whole ship that is giving any reading is worrying me. If it is what I think it is, And if it's saying what I think it's saying, then we've already gone too far back into the past, maybe as much as 2 million years before our own time. Time is bunk. I wonder who this ship belongs to, anyway, said Arthur. Me, said Zaphod. No, who it really belongs to. Really me. Look, property is theft, right? Therefore, theft is property. Therefore, this ship is mine, okay? Tell the ship that. Ship, this is your new owner speaking to... He got no further. Several things happened at once. The ship dropped out of time travel mode and re-emerged into real space. All the controls on the console, which had been shut down for the time trip, now lit up. A large vision screen above the console winked into life, revealing a wide starscape and a single very large sun dead ahead of them. None of these things, however, were responsible for the fact that Zaphod was at the same moment hurled bodily backwards against the rear of the cabin, as were all the others. They were hurled back by a single thunderous clap of noise that thudded out of the monitor speakers surrounding the vision screen.
Okay, Channel 9 on power, testing Channel 15. Channel 15, A-OK. The black stunt ship is now in position. It's looking good. Gonna be a great sun dive. Stage computer online? Online. Take control of the black ship. Black ship locked into trajectory program on standby. Testing Channel 20.
Zaphod leapt across the cabin and switched frequencies on the sub-ether receiver before the next mind-pulverizing noise hit them. He stood there quivering. "What?" said Trillian in a small, quiet voice. "Does sun-dive mean?"
It means that the ship is going to dive into the sun. Sun-dive. It's very simple to understand. What do you expect if you steal Hot Black Desiato's stunt ship?
"How do you know that this is Hot Black Desiato's stunt ship?"
Simple. I parked it for him.
"Then why didn't you tell us?"
Well, you said you wanted excitement and adventure and really wild things.
On a different frequency, the sub-ether receiver had picked up a public broadcast, which now echoed round the cabin. "Fine weather for the concert here this afternoon. I'm standing here in front of the stage, in the middle of the red-lit desert, and with the aid of hyperbinoptic glasses, I can just about make out the huge audience cowering there on the horizon all around me. Behind me, the speaker stacks rise like a sheer cliff face, and high above me, the sun is shining away and doesn't know what's going to hit it. The environmentalist lobby do know what's going to hit it, and they claim that the concert will cause earthquakes, tidal waves, hurricanes, irreparable damage to the atmosphere, and all the usual things that environmentalists usually go on about. But I've just had a report that a representative of disaster area met with the environmentalists at lunchtime and had them all shot, so nothing now lies in the way of... Zaphod switched it off. He turned to Ford. "Tell me what you think I am thinking." "I think you're thinking it's time we got off this ship." "I think you're right," said Zaphod. He span round, wild-eyed. "Ford, how many escape capsules are there?" "None. Did you count them?" "Twice. Did you manage to raise the stage crew on the radio?" "Yeah. I said there were a whole bunch of people on board, and they said to say hi to everybody." "Didn't you tell them who you were?" "Oh, yeah. They said it was a great honor, that and something about a restaurant bill and my executors." Arthur was stumbling around the back of the cabin. He stopped suddenly. "Incidentally, what does teleport mean?" "Where does it say teleport?" "Well, just over here, in fact, just under the word emergency, above the word system, and beside the sign saying out of order." In the pandemonium that instantly followed, the only action to follow was that of Ford Prefect lunging across the cabin to the small black box that Arthur had indicated and stabbing repeatedly at the single black button set into it. A 6-foot square panel slid open beside it, revealing a compartment which resembled a multiple shower unit that had found a new function in life as an electrician's junk store. Half-finished wiring hung from the ceiling. A jumble of abandoned components lay strewn on the floor, and the programming panel lolled out of the cavity in the wall into which it should have been secured. "Hell's donkeys," muttered Zaphod as he and Ford attempted to sort through the tangle of wiring. After a moment or so, Ford told him to stand back. He tossed a coin into the teleport and jiggled a switch on the lolling control panel. With a crackle and spit of light, the coin vanished. "Well, that much of it works. However, there is no guidance system. A matter transference teleport with no guidance programming could put you, well, anywhere. The sun of Kakrafoon loomed huge on the screen. Who cares? We go where we go. And there is no auto system. We couldn't all go. Someone would have to stay and operate it. A solemn moment shuffled past. The sun loomed larger and larger. Hey, Marvin, kid, how you doing?
Very badly, I suspect.
A shortish while later, the concert on Kakrafoon reached an unexpected climax. The black ship, with its single morose occupant, had plunged on schedule into the nuclear furnace of the sun. Arthur woke up and instantly regretted it. Hangovers he'd had, but never anything on this scale. This was it. This was the big one. This was the ultimate pits. Matter transference beams, he decided, were not as much fun as, say, a good solid kick in the head. "Where are we?" gasped Arthur. "I think we're in a spaceship of some kind," said Ford. Down the corridor came the sound of a dull, stomping throb. "Trillion?" called Arthur nervously. "Zaphod?" Ford shrugged. "Nowhere about," he said. "I've looked. They could be anywhere. An unprogrammed teleport can throw you light years in any direction. Judging by the way I feel, I should think we've travelled a very long way indeed. Look, there's a plaque," he explained to Arthur. "It's frosted over." He rubbed the frost clear and examined the engraved characters. To Arthur they looked like the footprints of a spider that had had one too many of whatever it is that spiders have on a night out. But Ford instantly recognized an early form of galactic easy read. It says, "Golga Frincham Arc Fleet, Ship B, Hold 7, Telephone Sanitizer, 2nd Class," and a serial number. "A telephone sanitizer?" said Arthur. "A dead telephone sanitizer? Best kind. But what's he doing here?" Ford peered through the top at the figure within. "Not a lot," he said. He scampered over to another sarcophagus. "This one's a dead hairdresser. Hoopy." The next sarcophagus revealed itself to be the last resting place of an advertising account executive. The one after that contained a second-hand car salesman, 3rd class. An inspection hatch let into the floor suddenly caught Ford's attention, and he squatted down to unfasten it, thrashing away at the clouds of freezing gas that threatened to envelop him. A thought occurred to Arthur. "If these are just coffins," he said, "why are they kept so cold? Or indeed, why are they kept anyway?" said Ford, tugging the hatchway open. The gas poured down through it. "Why, in fact, is anyone going to all the trouble and expense of carting 5,000 dead bodies through space?" 10,000, said Arthur, pointing at the archway through which the next chamber was dimly visible. Ford stuck his head down through the floor hatchway. He looked up again. 15,000, he said. "There's another lot down there." 15 million, said a voice. "That's a lot," said Ford. A lot. "Turn around slowly," barked the voice, "and put your hands up. Any other move and I blast you into tiny, tiny bits." "Hello," said Ford, turning round slowly, putting his hands up and not making any other move. "Why," said Arthur Dent, "isn't anyone ever pleased to see us?" "Move!" screamed their captor. Arthur moved. Ford shrugged and moved. Ford Prefect and Arthur Dent trudged onwards up the ship's apparently endless corridors. Number 2 marched behind them, barking the occasional order about not making any false moves or trying any funny stuff. They seemed to have passed at least a mile of continuous brown Hessian wall weave. Finally they reached a large steel door which slid open when Number 2 shouted at it. They entered. To the eyes of Ford Prefect and Arthur Dent, the most remarkable thing about the ship's bridge was not the 50-foot diameter hemispherical dome which covered it and through which the dazzling display of stars shone down on them. To people who have eaten at the restaurant at the end of the universe, such wonders are commonplace. Nor was it the bewildering array of instruments that crowded the long circumferential wall around them. To Arthur this was exactly what spaceships were traditionally supposed to look like, and to Ford it looked thoroughly antiquated. It confirmed his suspicions that Disaster Area's stunt ship had taken them back at least 1 million, if not 2 million years before their own time. No. the thing that really caught them off balance was the bath. The bath stood on a 6-foot pedestal of rough-hewn blue water crystal and was of a baroque monstrosity not often seen outside the Maximegalon Museum of Diseased Imaginings. An intestinal jumble of plumbing had been picked out in gold leaf rather than decently buried at midnight in an unmarked grave. The taps and shower attachment would have made a gargoyle jump. As the dominant centrepiece of a starship bridge, it was terribly wrong, and it was with the embittered air of a man who knew this that number 2 approached it. "Captain, sir!" A large, genial face and a genial foam-covered arm popped up above the rim of the monstrous bath. "Ah, hello, number 2, said the captain, waving a cheery sponge. "Having a nice day?" "I have brought you the prisoners I located in Freezer Bay 7, sir." Ford and Arthur coughed in confusion. Hello, they said. The captain beamed at them. "Oh, hello there. Excuse me not getting up, just having a quick bath. Well, gin and tonics all round then. Look in the fridge, number 1. "Certainly, sir." Number 2 stood before the captain's bathtub, trembling with frustration. "Don't you want to interrogate the prisoner, sir?" "Why on Golga Frincham should I want to do that?" "To get information out of them, sir. To find out why they came here." "Oh, no. I expect they just dropped in for a quick gin and tonics, don't you?" "But, sir, they're my prisoners. I must interrogate them." "Oh, all right, if you must. Ask them what they want to drink." "All right, you scum, you vermin. What do you want to drink?" "Well, the gin and tonic sounds very nice to me. What about you, Arthur?" "What? Oh, yes." "With ice or without?" "Oh, with, please," said Ford. "Lemon?" "Yes, please," said Ford. "And do you have any of those little biscuits, you know, the cheesy ones?" "I'm asking the questions!" Number 2... "Sir!" "Push off, would you? There's a good chap. I'm trying to have a relaxing bath." "May I remind you, sir, that you have now been in that bath for over 3 years?" "Well, you need to relax a lot in a job like mine." Treading very slowly and carefully, Ford moved over to the bath pedestal. "I wonder," said Ford, "could I ask you actually what your job is, in fact?" A hand tapped him on the shoulder. It was the first officer. "Your drinks," he said. "Ah, thank you. I mean, I couldn't help noticing the bodies in the hold." "Bodies?" said the captain in surprise. "Yes, all those dead telephone sanitizers and account executives, you know, down in the hold." "Oh, no, they're not dead. Good Lord, no, they're frozen. They're going to be revived." Arthur seemed to come out of a trance. "You mean you've got a hold full of frozen hairdressers?" "Oh, yes," said the captain. "Millions of them. Hairdressers, tired TV producers, insurance salesmen, personnel officers, security guards, public relations executives, management consultants, you name it. We're going to colonize another planet." "Exciting, isn't it?" "What? With that lot?" said Arthur. "Ah, now don't misunderstand me. We're just one of the ships in the Ark fleet. We're the B Ark, you see. Sorry, could I just ask you to run a bit more hot water for me?" Arthur obliged, and a cascade of pink, frothy water swirled around the bath. The captain let out a sigh of pleasure. "Thank you so much, my dear fellow. Do help yourselves to more drinks, of course." Ford tossed down his drink, took the bottle from the first officer's tray, and refilled his glass to the top. "What," he said, "is a B Ark?" "Well, this is," said the captain, and swished the foamy water around joyfully with the duck. "Well, what happened, you see, was our planet, the world from which we have come, was, so to speak, doomed." "Doomed?" "Oh, yes. So what everyone thought was, let's pack the whole population into some giant spaceships and go and settle on another planet." "You mean a less doomed one?" "Yes. So it was decided to build 3 ships, you see, 3 arcs in space, and... I'm not boring you, am I?" No, said Ford firmly. "It's fascinating. You know, it's delightful to have someone else to talk to for a change." Trouble with a long journey like this is that you end up just talking to yourself a lot, which gets terribly boring because half the time you know what you're going to say next." "Only half the time?" asked Arthur in surprise. "Yes, about half, I'd say. Anyway, where's the soap?" He fished around and found it. "Yes, so, anyway," he resumed, "the idea was that into the first ship, the A ship, would go all the brilliant leaders, the scientists, the great artists, all the achievers, and then into the third, or C ship, would go all the people who did the actual work, who made things and did things. And then into the B ship, that's us, would go everyone else, the middlemen, you see." "And we were sent off first," he concluded, and hummed a little bathing tune. Said Arthur after a moment, "what exactly was it that was wrong with your planet, then?" "Oh, it was doomed, as I said. Apparently it was going to crash into the sun or something, or maybe it was that the moon was going to crash into us. Well, something of the kind. Absolutely terrifying prospect, whatever it was." "Oh," said the first officer suddenly, "I thought it was that the planet was going to be invaded by a gigantic swarm of 12-foot piranha bees. Wasn't that it?" Number 2 span around.
"That's not what I was told. My commanding officer told me that the entire planet was in imminent danger of being eaten by an enormous mutant star goat, a monstrous creature from the pit of hell with scything teeth 10,000 miles long, breath that would boil oceans, claws that could tear continents from their roots, 1,000 eyes that burned like the sun, slavering jaws 1,000,000 miles across, a monster such as you have never, ever—"
"And they made sure they sent you lot off first, did they?" inquired Arthur. "Oh, yes," said the captain. "Well, everyone said very nicely, I thought, that it was very important for morale to feel that they would be arriving on a planet where they could be sure of a good haircut and where the phones were clean." "Oh, yes," agreed Ford. "I can see that would be very important. And the other ships, they followed on after you, did they?" "Ah, well, it's funny you should say that, because, curiously enough, we haven't heard a peep out of them since we left 5 years ago. But they must be behind us somewhere." He peered off into the distance again. Ford peered with him and gave a thoughtful frown. "Unless, of course, they were eaten by the goat." "Ah, yes, the goat. It's a funny thing, but now that I actually come to tell the story to someone else, I mean, does it strike you as odd, Number 1? Said Number 1. "Well," said Ford, "I can see that you've got a lot of things you're going to want to talk about, so thanks for the drinks, and if you could sort of drop us off at the nearest convenient planet—" "Ah, well, that's a little difficult, you see, because our trajectory thingy was preset before we left Golga Frincham. I think partly because I'm not very good with figures." "You mean we're stuck here on this ship?" exclaimed Ford, suddenly losing patience with the whole charade. "When are you meant to be reaching this planet you're meant to be colonizing?" "Oh, we're nearly there, I think," said the captain. "Any second now. It's probably time I was getting out of this bath, in fact. Oh, I don't know, though. Why stop just when I'm enjoying it?" "So we're actually going to land in a minute," said Arthur. "Well, not so much land. In fact, not actually land as such. No, I think as far as I can remember, we were programmed to, crash on it." "Crash?" Yes," said the captain, "yes. It's all part of the plan, I think. There was a terribly good reason for it, which I can't quite remember at the moment. It was something to do with, Ford exploded. "You're a load of useless bloody loonies!" he shouted. "Ah, yes, that was it," beamed the captain. "That was the reason." The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy has this to say about the planet of Golga Frincham. It is a planet with an ancient and mysterious history, in which the most mysterious figures of all were without doubt those of the great circling poets of Arium. These circling poets used to live in remote mountain passes where they would lie in wait for small bands of unwary travellers, circle around them, and throw rocks at them. And when the travellers cried out, saying, why didn't they go away and get on with writing some poems instead of pestering people with all this rock-throwing business, they would suddenly stop and then break into one of the 794 great song cycles of Vasilian. These songs were all of extraordinary beauty, and even more extraordinary length, and all fell into exactly the same pattern. The first part of each song would tell how there once went forth from the city of Vasilian a party of 5 sage princes with 4 horses. The princes, who were of course brave, noble, and wise, travel widely in distant lands, fight giant ogres, pursue exotic philosophies, take tea with weird gods, and rescue beautiful monsters from ravening princesses, before finally announcing that they have achieved enlightenment and that their wanderings are therefore accomplished. The second and much longer part of each song would then tell of all their bickerings about which one of them is going to have to walk back. All this lay in the planet's remote past. It was, however, a descendant of one of these eccentric poets who invented the spurious tales of impending doom which enabled the people of Golgafrincham to rid themselves of an entire useless third of their population. The other 2/3 stayed firmly at home and lived full, rich, and happy lives until they were all suddenly wiped out by a virulent disease contracted from a dirty telephone. That night, the ship crash-landed onto an utterly insignificant little blue-green planet which circled a small, unregarded yellow sun in the uncharted backwaters of the unfashionable end of the western spiral arm of the galaxy. In the hours preceding the crash, Ford Prefect had fought furiously but in vain to unlock the controls of the ship from their preordained flight path. It had quickly become apparent to him that the ship had been programmed to convey its payload safely, if uncomfortably, to its new home, but to cripple itself beyond all hope of repair in the process. Its screaming, blazing descent through the atmosphere had stripped away most of its superstructure and outer shielding, and its final inglorious belly-flop into a murky swamp had left its crew only a few hours of darkness during which to revive and offload its deep-frozen and unwanted cargo, for the ship began to settle almost at once, slowly upending its gigantic bulk in the stagnant slime. Countless numbers had, unsurprisingly, been lost to the swamp in the night, and millions more had been sucked down with the ship. But those that survived still numbered hundreds of thousands, and as the day wore on they crawled out over the surrounding countryside, each looking for a few square feet of solid ground on which to collapse and recover from their nightmare ordeal.